Hey, Emmanuel.
Hola, Bárbara.
How are you?
Fine. A little nervous, but good.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Where are you from?
Originally from Argentina,
Okay.
and now I live in California. I live in San Mateo, California.
Okay. You work with Michael in Box, right?
Yeah, I used to work with Michael at Box.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I worked at Box for about 2 years, and now I work at Waymo.
Okay. How many employees have Box? How big?
Well, I don't know right now, but before I left, it was close to 2,000.
2,000. Oh.
Hi, Julieta.
Hi, y'all. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great.
Remind me again, Emmanuel, I think I remember you mentioning that you're located in Mexico. Barbara, where are you located?
I was just telling Emmanuel I'm in San Mateo, California, which is like 30 minutes away from San Francisco.
Cool. I'm in Denver, Colorado. I don't know if I mentioned that yet.
Oh, and how long have you been with Zap? Are you with Zapier?
Zapier, since January of 2019.
Oh, okay. So, close to
almost 2 years now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, when I joined, they basically at that point hired the whole recruiting function. I started, and then my second week of the job was going to our first company retreat, because Zapier is a fully remote company. They've been fully remote for the last 10 years. And so when it is safe to do the meeting in person thing, we do these retreats so that we can meet everyone face to face, since we are mostly remote. And yeah, my second week of the job was getting to meet basically the whole recruiting function, which was me and like 3 other recruiters at the time. It's been a great journey.
Great.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Hey, Michael.
Hi.
Showtime.
Can you guys hear a baby crying in the background?
Sounded like a whistle to me.
Yeah, very slightly.
Yeah.
Okay, my husband has her. Hopefully he can calm her down.
Sounds good.
Now I'll go on mute.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever heard of, there's this cool software called Crisp, literally spelled like that. And it's amazing for helping block out literally any type of noise that could be happening. And so I've been recommending, especially since a lot of folks are joining the remote working place, that like it's great for like all the background sounds from a lawnmower outside to unexpected coworkers and roommates and things like that. I definitely recommend, if y'all could, to check it out and then try to get your company to pay for it, because definitely have to pay for that.
Google Hangouts has a noise cancellation feature. And normally I use Google Hangouts, but I'm using something different today, so I don't have anything to block that. Yeah.
I was gonna use I have my big red Beat headphones, but the thing is those things pick up everything around me.
Yeah.
Like they'll noise cancel, but when I use them for audio and for calls, you can hear like the lawnmower that's like 5 houses away. You can hear like every little thing. So not today. I just decided I'm just gonna go straight with the computer audio. So we shall see. Okay, I'm on the Box. Oh God, I'm so used to work. I'm not on the Box note. I'm on the Google Doc that we'll be using. And we'll get started in 2 minutes. Hi, Karina. How's it going?
Good.
Good. People are starting to join, which is great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Okay. Hello, how's it going?
Hi, good. Can you all see me? It's a little bit more sunny than I expected, so I might have to do some stuff. Sorry, I was in I saw this room and then I thought it took me to another room and I was like, wait, where is this? And then yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad it worked out. Like we all have access. It all worked out at the end of the day. We're set and ready to go, which is great.
Yeah, Hopin is really good for that.
Yeah. Was Hopin around before? Like, is it recent? A recent company?
I think it is because maybe it was, but I didn't know. I didn't know about it before.
Okay, 1 minute, and we'll get started. Welcome, everybody that's joining. Thank you so much for coming to this panel. We're approaching the end of the day. Some people still might have that post-lunch tiredness. We'll wake you guys up. We have a really lively panel for today. Very happy to touch base. We will get started in just a few seconds. Awesome. And then in terms of just panelists, if you're not talking, if you can go on mute, that would be fantastic. And then we can go from there. All right. It's 2:45. Let's get started. First and foremost, thank you so much to Techqueria for the opportunity to have this panel. I won't speak on behalf of all of the panelists, but I would say, are pretty excited about having this panel and having some discussions in line with today's theme, which is getting hired. So to everybody that's tuning in today, I see there's about 40 of us in there and growing. I want to thank you all for joining. If you could give us a quick hello in the chat section, share with us where you're dialing in from, that would be fantastic. So we can get started with introductions. So that said, would love to get started and do an intro with every person that we have joining us for this fantastic panel. I'll just give you a quick intro and then I'd love to turn it over to my panelists. So I'm Michael Urbina. Nice to meet everybody. I'm an executive recruiter here at Box. And I also lead the diversity recruiting function for executive level recruiting. And then what excites me most about the recruiting profession is that with our jobs, we are literally transforming lives, transforming futures by giving opportunities to people that maybe didn't have access to something before. So that said, that's a little bit about myself. Would love to turn it over first and foremost to Julieta. Julieta, if you can share with us, and then every other subsequent panelist, your name, where you work, and then what you love most about the recruiting profession, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, my name is Julieta. I work for Zapier, and the thing that I love most about recruiting is getting to help build world-class organizations with world-class talent. And I'll pass it off to Karina.
Hi everyone, my name is Karina. I lead talent for Nova Credit, so we're a small startup. And I think a more selfish reason of why I love recruiting is I'm fascinated by people, and I love to be able to just get to know people and their stories and their experiences. I'll pass it over to Emmanuel.
Hello, I am Emmanuel Alvera, founder of Empleos TI and Hireline. We are a recruiting platform to help companies find the best tech talent. And this part is, I like so much to help companies to find talent, and the talent have.
Awesome. Catalina? Oh, Barbara, sorry.
Barbara?
Okay. My name is Barbara. I'm a recruiter at Waymo, which is formerly the Google Self-Driving Project. And similar to you, Michael, what I like the most about recruiting is not only meeting new people, but also matching them with meaningful work that can change their lives and provide them with various possibilities. So that's really what I like the most about recruiting. And I'm going to pass it on to Catalina.
Thank you, Barbara. And I'm Catalina. I currently work and founded Catalyst Creation, a career coaching company that really helps organizations and individuals make their dreams career realities. I used to be a recruiter at Facebook, Twitter, Andreessen Horowitz, and Asana. So I come from the recruiting world. And what I love most about recruiting and career coaching is really helping people and companies connect with themselves and make connections in between themselves. Because I think the most important part of a job search absolutely is you and how you fit with a company, and really bring that to the forefront.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So what I'd love to do now is, for everybody joining, we have three questions that we are essentially, three main topics, excuse me, that we're going to be working through with our panelists. From there, we will then go to the chat section for any questions that you all have. I'm sure this is an AMA, so I'm sure that everybody has questions that that they would love to ask our recruiting panel. So what I'd love to invite every single person listening to is to put your questions in the chat box. I will be monitoring the chat box, and then from there, following our preset list of questions, we will then move directly into the AMA, and I will go to the chat box for the questions. So if you have any specifics that you want to ask, again, please utilize the chat box at any point. That said, I would love to kick things off first and foremost with a really hot issue right now, and that's COVID-19. As we all know, COVID-19 has dramatically changed the lives of people all over the world. Without a doubt, this has and does include people that are, in the midst of a job search right now, or are thinking about potentially moving towards a new job. So that being said, Barbara, I'd love to start with you if that's okay. So you work at Waymo, the leading self-driving car company. What would your advice be for job seekers right now looking to apply and to land a job at a well-known organization right now?
Great. Thank you, Michael. I have a few. And yes, well-known organizations do receive a lot of applicants, so anything that you can do to stand out and to get highlighted always helps. I think there's various things that you can do depending on which stage of the process you're at. Before applying to the job, if you have anybody that can submit you as a referral, always helps. If you can connect with people from that organization at a career event or a networking event, that definitely helps. Or if you get an opportunity to do any temporary work to get your foot in the door with that organization, also helps you stand out among other candidates. During the application process, make sure that you read the job description and that you highlight on your resume what about yourself makes you a good fit for the opportunity. And then during the interview, somebody once told me this phrase, which is failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And that couldn't be more true for when you're going through an interview process. So prepare. And that means know your audience, know who you're going to be speaking to, look them up on LinkedIn, and maybe prepare some sample questions tailored to their background. Or if you are moving on to the next set of interviews, so you pass the recruiter interview, you're moving on to the next set of interviews, ask the recruiter, what are some questions that I may be asked? What should I prepare with? Know that the recruiter has your best interest in mind. If they moved you forward, they believe in you. So more often than not, they can help you prepare for that next set of interviews. And then last but not least, show interest in the company. I know sometimes we're told if you play hard to get, they're going to want you more. That is really not true. Playing hard to get doesn't really work. We want you to be convinced that this is the right job for you and that this is the right company for you. So show interest to the recruiter and in the company. So those are some of my my answers to that question, Michael.
Yeah, I think those are great pieces of advice. And the more that you know that the recruiter's on your side, as you were saying, the better off you'll be in the process. Because I mean, we all do this work. We all, of course, want to hire the best possible person for the job. So if someone's a fit, we're excited. We want to make this hire just as much as you want the position itself. So I'm really happy and glad that we could start off with that question. Karina, I'd love to move to you if that's okay. So given your role, I'm really curious, what would be your recommendations for people to discuss how COVID has impacted them while looking for a job?
That's a great question. And I think I've kind of seen a lot of candidates with this kind of situation coming through. I would say the first one that I really appreciated is that some candidates actually write it on their resume. And so when they mark the end of that tenure of that role, they'll mention, it was due to a COVID layoff. And I kind of have that background as a recruiter. Other times when I usually ask candidates, what's prompting your job search at this moment? And they'll kind of step into letting us know that, it was due to a COVID layoff. Again, this is something that I think a lot of recruiters are very empathetic about. Like, it's not a point against you in any means. And so what I would recommend is that once you're asked, why the job search now, or kind of what prompted it, let them know. You don't necessarily have to go into much detail. I think everyone knows the talent landscape. But then take that as an opportunity to really kind of say why you're excited, or what's the silver lining that you get to look for a new role, and kind of pitch your reason why you're interested in the company that you're interviewing for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And Julieta, I'd also love to ask you this question. I know that prior to our call, we kind of touched base and we were all discussing this. I'd love to get your thoughts as well on this question.
I think, one big thing I've been trusting with anyone that I've been meeting with is definitely reframe how you even think about your COVID layoff. If there's any reason to get laid off, the best reason is probably a pandemic. And I know that's a strange reframe to think about right now, but especially as you're preparing to have that conversation in the interview, preparing to market for yourself, understanding that that layoff had no impact on you as a worker or your value can help you also remember to then come in with that plan of how this time has helped you being able to shift in new direction, and understanding that recruiters are very empathetic and understanding to the fact that this is a big thing that's impacting the workforce right now. So don't be afraid to talk about it, and also don't be afraid to just, essentially just know it for what it is, but then focus in the conversation on why that company, even though the opportunity came about from something that you may have not anticipated for.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. I'm on LinkedIn and I see, people constantly, referring one another, highlighting and being signal boosts for each other, and trying to help amidst a really unprecedented time right now. And I'm sure that we all can relate. It's really, really unprecedented. A lot of our recruiting practices are shifting to 100% remote work. And this is not just happening in Silicon Valley. This is around the world, I'm sure. There are job markets outside of Silicon Valley, and the interview process, I'm sure, is, changing just like it is here. So that said, I'd love to kind of transition a little bit. Emmanuel, so your company, the company that you founded, does recruiting for major organizations across Mexico. How is the job market right now in Mexico and LATAM? And I'd also love to ask you a second question, if that's okay. And that would be, what would be your advice for job seekers outside of Silicon Valley, outside of the United States, to get hired? So I know I threw two questions at you, but I'd love to get your thoughts there.
Okay. At the beginning of the year, companies in Mexico had a lot of uncertainty. So they put the hiring process on standby. One data is May was the month with the worst numbers of job openings. They dropped 44% versus the last year. The good news is that the employment market is, we have 16 more job offers versus last year. They're recovering the employment market. The second question is my opinion for engineers outside of Silicon Valley is that today with the remote work, the dream job is closer than ever. Imagine you work for the company earning in dollars, but you are working remotely and paying your rent in pesos and in a city of Latam. The impact of the life quality is huge. That's, for me, the great opportunity.
It looks like we lost Emmanuel for a quick second. We're experiencing a couple just audio and visual issues there. So we'll come back to that question. But while Emmanuel is hopping back on, Catalina, I'd love to transition to you. So you are a career coach and the founder of Catalyst Creation. From your lens as a career coach, how would you advise people on their careers amidst COVID-19?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks so much. And sorry if there's background noise, just kind of being very transparent, authentic. There's some laundry I didn't realize. So if you hear that. But the reason I say that is because kind of going into the question and kind of going into everything that everyone has touched on, recruiters are really know kind of what's going on. And they're in the mindset of, hey, if someone is going through a hardship, if someone just, got laid off, if someone is switching careers, like they already have met you there with that empathy, right? And they're willing to give you that opportunity. However, they are going to ask you the hard questions. They are going to ask you why this company. They are going to ask you, why now? And the best advice that I can give anyone who has gotten laid off or is looking for a job right now, or even if you're still in a job, ask yourself, why do I want to be there? And what opportunity does this present for me? Because if you do that, when you go and chat with recruiters, they're going to see authenticity, they're going to see genuineness, and they're going to want to take a chance on you. One of the things I tell my clients all the time is you have to remember a recruiter is a person as well. They're a person with a job, and they really want to help you get into the company. That's their whole purpose. And with you doing some work on yourself and really understanding your mindset as to why everything is going on, right? Especially in your job search, I think that that's the work that they can't do, right? They can't advocate for you if you don't know why and what you want at that particular moment. So taking this time to really go deep and understand what's the reason for the next move.
Yeah, great feedback. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the answer there. So to keep things moving, would love to switch over to another major topic that I'm starting to see pop up in the chat, and something that I get asked a lot, in my LinkedIn messages by people, resumes and CVs. So as we all know, resumes are the first thing that we as recruiters see when we're hiring people. So I'm sure everybody listening would love everyone's thoughts on resumes. So Barbara, I'd actually love to start with you first, if that's okay. Waymo, as an Alphabet subsidiary, I'm sure receives thousands of resumes. What advice would you have for somebody in crafting a resume that stands out to recruiters?
Yep. Thank you, Michael. And I'm going to start with a statistic. And that statistic is, and this is out of a study done by the Ladders, which is an online job matching company. And the statistic is that recruiters spend on average 6 seconds looking at each resume before they make a decision to move forward or not. I see some faces nodding from other panelists. So you want to make sure that those 6 seconds are spent on the right things. And that means your resume should be free of distractions. And that means images, different font styles, colors, anything that could steer them away from paying attention to the important things. In those 6 seconds, this is mostly accurate, but recruiters spend those 6 seconds on your name, your current title and company, your previous title and company, previous position start and end dates, and then your education. So those are the things that we look at in those 6 seconds. So that's one important thing. Free from clutter. Your resume should be free from clutter. Your resume should follow standard hierarchy, and that means most recent work experience to last work experience. Surprisingly, we're still seeing some resumes that are flipped the other way around, and we're like, wait, you haven't worked since 1985, until we start looking further, and then we realize that no, they have more recent work experience. So that the chronological order. Typos, they're a big turnoff. Believe it or not, 61% of recruiters will reject a resume based on typos. And 43% of hiring managers will reject a resume based on typos. And this is out of a study done by Adecco. And then last but not least, tailor your resume to the job that you're applying to. Help us know why you're the best fit for the role. Make it obvious to us. So include keywords, include things that indicate to us the job description matches your experience. And then, Michael, I think you asked me about the 1 page long to 2 page long.
Yeah, I'd love your thoughts on that as well. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the length of a resume? Should it be 1 pages? Are you in the 2 page camp? What do you think there?
Yeah, if you have that amount of experience, 2 pages is fine. But remember, free from clutter, simple is better. And I apologize for the background noise. I have a newborn at home.
No worries.
But it can be 2 pages if you have that amount of experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Emmanuel, I'd love to transition over to you. So you read hundreds of resumes, I'm sure. If you come across a resume that stands out and makes you want to talk to that person, what does that resume look like? What would you say that winning resume, the one that really excites you, looks like? I'm curious, what did they include? What did they not include? What are your thoughts with that?
Okay. For me, a good CV is one that transmits very clearly raw details, projects, and technologies used on every job experience. That means that the recruiter can understand which are the technical strengths so he can see if they match the ones need to fill his job offers. In the same sense, in my opinion, it must not contain a huge list with 20 or 30 technical skills. This creates confusion. Something or you barely know about it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate that. Now, in terms of the interview process, I'm sure it can be pretty scary for a lot of people. You know, the resume is only that first piece that gets you in the door. But once you get the interview, at that point, you're moving through a whole process. So, Catalina, I'd love your thoughts. So how do you accurately or effectively prepare for the interview process? What thoughts? I'm curious about your insights there.
Definitely. And to steal Barbara's quote, I think it was of preparing to fail, right? If you don't prepare, you're going to fail. An interview, I think a lot of people mistake interviews for conversations because you're having a conversation with a person, like, you know, especially recruiters tend to be very like friendly and, you know, if depending on who you're talking to, it can seem very relaxed. However, what you're really preparing for is a presentation. And so understanding that key thing is going to make all of the difference of how you feel when you go into an interview. Because how would you prepare for a presentation, right? First of all, you have to understand what your subject matter is, right? And what you're good at, your strengths, your weaknesses, things like that. And what are you going to actually go in there and present about, right? And what you're presenting about is yourself. However, most of us do not take enough time to actually know ourselves. So when the questions of like, you know, tell me about a time you failed or tell me about your greatest strength come up, we're like, oh, I don't know, right? And so it causes the recruiter or the person that we're talking to lose trust in us, because if we don't know ourselves, how are they going to trust us to actually know their company and actually be able to talk to their customers, right? Regardless of what your role is. So it's really, really important to take a few moments to really understand yourself. Maybe create some interview examples to some of the questions that you're going to be answering. My favorite thing is literally take a spreadsheet and put down all of the questions that you want to answer, put down 3 examples, and write down word by word in a STAR format. STAR format, for those of you who don't know, is situation, task, action, and result. And you just put it down there, right? And you memorize it and you practice it so that when you go into an interview, all you have to do is remember, hey, which one of these examples would actually fit this question? And then you can actually speak about it, not from a place of, I have no idea, I'm going to make something up, but hey, I prepared, I'm good, right? And then I can just tell a story. And when you make that shift in your mind, then you become a lot more calm and you're able to really just show up as yourself and really show the recruiting team and also the hiring team why you're such a value add, because you're able to just like go out of that fight and flight mode and really be like, I know what I'm talking about and I'm the best candidate because I have done research on myself and done research on the company and found the connections, and I'm showing you why.
I'm so happy that you shared that. I whenever people ask me, that's the one piece of feedback that I always lead with is you have to be comfortable and know your story, because if you don't know your story, if you haven't accepted it, or if, you know, for some reason you're just unsure about how to talk about your story, it's going to show up in the interview process. So that confidence really is important in order for you to do well. I really do appreciate that. Thank you, Catalina.
And I just would want to add one more thing to that as well, is really, really understanding that two people are different, right? And so what one thing means to me, it might not be the same thing to the other person I'm talking to. So taking time to define for them, hey, failure to me means X, or success to me means X, because then you're kind of switching their mindset and being like, oh wait, maybe I didn't think of it that way. But when you tell that story, it's going to make 1,000% more sense because you're bringing context into the situation. Yeah, 100%
agree. Julietta, I'd love to turn to you. So in terms of, you know, the interview process, oftentimes the scariest part is that first call that you have. You get the email that says, congrats, we'd love to move you forward. We'd love to speak with, we'd love for you to speak with the recruiter. And that oftentimes is the first and the scariest part for a lot of people. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Once you land that first call with the recruiter, how do you best prepare for that call?
Yeah, honestly, Catalina just gave a lot of great advice for candidates as far as like what to do to prepare and really getting your story ready. I would say the candidates that blow me away and probably any recruiter was excited are the candidates that not only know their story, but understand how their story can then impact and solve the pain points I'm experiencing or the hiring manager is experiencing, and being able to combine those two answers together. Catalina also mentioned the STAR interview method, which I dropped a link in our chat today, and I send it to all my candidates before our first interview. The reason that I really enjoy this model is because it definitely breaks down how you approach behavioral interview questions that are super common, especially for that first call with the recruiter. And so what I typically advise for anyone would be to like understand your story, understand how it connects to the model, and practicing those questions. And then also, I'm not sure if any of you guys were able to make it to the negotiating 101 conversation, but I also encourage you to come prepared to talk to the recruiter and ask them, hey, what's the salary range for this position? And be prepared to let them know what your expectations are too. I think as well, you got to interview us as much as we're interviewing you. You're making a huge decision about your career, which is like, how much time do we spend at work on a daily basis? So it's a big decision. And not only having the stuff prepared to like, of course, present and show us your best self, but also be prepared to think about what matters most to you and then ask those questions to us too.
Yeah, I think that's really great feedback. I always point my candidates to STAR and use that to prep them as well. So I'm glad that a lot of us are using the same thing. And then also Airtable as well. Amanda mentioned that they have some great spreadsheets for job searches and interviews. I would +1 to that as well. So now I'd love to switch over, Karina, I'd love to switch over to you. So you recently, switched over from Genentech to Nova Credit's recruiting team. What resume recommendations would you have for somebody looking to become a recruiter, to become one of us themselves? Any pieces of feedback there?
I'll say I'll add 2 points on the resume, but I think as everyone mentioned, creating that switch takes a lot more than just the resume. But I think Barbara said it best, like a clean resume is so important. Again, like having it very organized and detailed, especially I think if you're trying to kind of break into the recruiting space. I'm not sure about the other recruiters, but I tend to hold my fellow recruiters to higher standards. And so I'm like, you should know this already, like your resume should be in tip-top shape. So do know you are most likely being held to higher resume standards. The second thing as well, and I think Barbara, you mentioned this, is tailoring your resume. That's incredibly important. If you have one resume and you're kind of doing a one size fits all, the reality is that it probably won't fit any. And I think the best way when I was starting out and trying to understand what exactly this meant or how to go about it is I would go to the job description that I was looking to apply to, go down to the qualifications and use that exact language that they had listed out in that qualification into my resume. So whatever action verbs they have, like use that as your action verb. And I think a big thing, again, like recruiters are looking at a lot of resumes. So if it's clean, it'll be easier to read for them. And once they start seeing those words that kind of stand out to them, they'll take some more time to kind of read through the actual phrases and understanding what's there. If this is the first time that you're like breaking into recruiting, I would say like your network is incredibly important. That's how I broke into recruiting. I always made sure to have a network and let them know what I was interested in. So when an opportunity did pop up, someone actually thought of me and made the connection. So that's important. And then the last thing I'll kind of touch on beyond the resume, if you're breaking into recruiting, especially during this time, I think the talent organizations have been like heavily impacted. The job search alone is like not fun. I don't think I've ever heard someone who enjoys like doing the job search. So really be, empathetic and patient with yourself, because there will be a lot of losses. I think that's something that not a lot of people talk about. Like you will probably apply to like potentially hundreds, like almost 100 jobs to get that one good job. So there is a lot of perseverance that is needed. But I would say that and patience will really help.
Thank you, Karina. While we're speaking about resumes, I'd love to just throw you 2 quick questions, if that's okay, from the chat box.
Sure.
So Dilcy asked, if you're applying to a job in a different city, how should you show that on your resume or a cover letter so that you're actually considered for the job seriously? Like, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I would honestly, and I'm just thinking kind of also, I will preface this by saying that every recruiter looks at resumes differently. My personal preference is if it's not within the city that we're looking for, make sure that's your first sentence on your resume, like at the very top, like open to relocation in XYZ, because I'm going to go to the very top of your resume the first thing. And if I know that that's there, that's saving me of having to email you a question and see if you're willing to relocate. Because the reality is that if I have to do an additional step, I will most likely not do it and just kind of err on the fact that you were not necessarily within that city or qualified.
Yeah, I think that's really great feedback. And just a second quick follow-up question as well, just while we're on CVs and jobs postings. What if you're looking for a remote job? Alejandro had a really good question in the chat box. What if you're looking for a remote job, but the posting is not listed as remote? Should we still try and apply? Should we try to negotiate? What are your thoughts there?
That's an interesting one. I think most jobs that are open to remote will indicate that they're open to remote. So I would usually kind of err on not applying. I know that's usually like you should apply to as many as possible. But the reality is there's usually a lot of conversations that go in within the recruiting team before a job is posted. And that's usually a decision that is made on whether they can handle a remote position or not. So if they're not posting it as remote, that's a conversation that they've had and a decision that they've come to.
Yeah.
As someone who recruits for a remote company, another important thing to note is that a lot of job boards actually don't allow us the opportunity to even mark remote. So I may have to default to choosing a particular location in a time zone I may be trying to target, even though that role in honesty is going to be remote. So another thing that job candidates can do is that there are remote specific job boards if remote's the most important thing to you. I would, of course, in any interview, reiterate how the company is exciting and not necessarily the remote piece. But there are resources out there if you're looking for remote specific opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts on the 2 questions that I've asked very quickly? Okay, so let's dive to our last preset question, and then we'll open it up to everybody in the chat box. Everybody listening, I'd love to just start queuing up questions. So if you have any questions that you'd love to ask in the chat box, feel free to do so now, and then I'll get those queued up while we're wrapping up. So last question, and I'm going to pose this to everybody. Catalina, I'd love to start with you. So I want to stand out. I'm excited. I'm a candidate, and I really want to impress people. So if you had a microphone that could reach every job seeker in the world, every candidate, what would you say to them? How can people stand out during the recruiting process?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. And I actually was looking at the chat box for questions, and it goes to one of the questions, like of connection, around connection. And I think it's important to remember, like, a resume is a piece of paper, an application is a piece of paper, right? So a lot of people don't actually know who you are, only that piece of paper, right? So going the extra step of actually going to whatever company you want to go to and finding someone who you genuinely connect with. And I say genuine because it's like, oh, recruiter, okay, great, let's go and like message them. No, that's not genuine. Remember, recruiters are people, right? And so you want to make that person's day by finding something that you honestly fully connect with and crafting a really thoughtful message and beginning an actual relationship, a professional relationship with that person, not with the intent of just getting that referral, but with the intent of actually getting to know them and hopefully, you know, in the future asking them for, you know, a referral, or like maybe, you know, they introduce you to their other recruiter friends or anything like that, because it is so crucial that you use yourself. That's the only thing that's different than resume A and resume B, is yourself, to go in there and actually create the connections that you want. Personally, I've made all of my jumps, particularly off of connections and connecting with people. So I'm a huge advocate of, like, your network is your net worth. And so starting from that and not viewing it as a short term, but more of a long term, you know, goal of, like, I just want to connect with really amazing professionals, whether that be recruiters, whether that be PMs, engineers, whatever it is, and really just open that genuine door and seeing what comes out of that relationship.
I'm assuming that's why some of the individuals in this session may be to start that genuine connection via Techqueria event. But yeah, I agree with you, Cara. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Michael, had to chime in.
No, you're good. I'd love to pass it over to you. What would your advice be?
Simple. I think attitude is a big one. Those individuals that are engaging, are making the conversation super positive and fun. We as recruiters often think this is how the interaction later on is going to be once they join and are part of a different team. So to me, attitude and that positive energy through a conversation is something that makes them stand out.
Awesome. Thank you. Karina, what do you think? What would be your advice?
I'm echoing Barbara. I would say, and this is to add additional context, I can usually be on calls from like 8 a.m. to like 3 back-to-back candidates, right? And you have those 30 minutes. And if you're probably like call 5 or 6, if you come in with a level of energy and passion for the role, the company, your own experience, that is so contagious, and I am just so excited, and you can hear my voice, and I will leave that call so refreshed and just like with the best impression of you, that it's just like it counts like 100% to kind of how the recruiters feel about you. And again, like, the recruiters are your friends, so you leave them with that level of energy, like they will move mountains to get you to where you need to get.
Awesome. Thank you. Emmanuel, what do you think? What would be your advice for that candidate to stand out? Oh, you're on mute, Emmanuel.
Yes, Barbara is saying the attitude. Be yourself is a good advice for me. In the other part is not lie. The recruiter, he has interviewed many people, and yes, be honest with the dates, with all the details in your experience. Be honest. This is the best advice for me.
Awesome. Julieta, how about you?
Ooh, so many great things have already been said, but I just have to reiterate that, like, when I'm in a recruiter screen and I can tell that the candidate has not only taken the time to understand, again, themselves and their story, but how that can help then impact whatever pain points my hiring teams are experiencing, It gets me so jazzed. It's better than a cup of coffee. And so being able to approach each conversation that you have with the recruiter in a strategic way, there's probably not many recruiter screens that you land. And so take the time to do that research, and again, also interview us too. I love candidates that I can tell are really trying to be strategic about their next opportunity. It shows me that they're looking for a long-term fit, and and I'd love to have them grow in my org in that.
Thank you. So I appreciate, so those are the only preset questions that we had. So we have about 6 minutes left. We are going to make history, you all. We are going to answer tons of Q&A questions in 6 minutes. So I'm essentially going to just it's going to be a lightning round. I'm going to shoot off some questions. I'm going to direct it to some of you. If you really want to chime in and I didn't call on you, feel free to chime in. So we'd love to first kick things off. Julietta, to you. So there was a really great question in the chat box. When would be a good time to reach out to hiring managers or somebody else in the company where you applied if you've not heard back after a couple of weeks? Do you have any insights there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely also this requires some prior research to the company and also checking out their Glassdoor reviews. Zapier have a 7-day commitment to candidates. So if I haven't gotten back to you in 7 days, please ping me because something is wrong and I want to be able to get in touch with you. But the reality is that every organization is different and every recruiter is juggling a lot of different scenarios that you may not totally understand as a candidate. And so my biggest advice to anyone reaching out to a recruiter is that understanding and coming with that empathy. And then even just opening it up, I heard this advice in an earlier panel of like, I just wanted to check in. If the update is no update, that's okay. But how are you doing? How have you been? To me, when I read the no update is a good update, it's like a sigh of relief because I may not have one. And I desperately want one. And I think any other recruiter would say the same. And so I would just encourage to have a lot of empathy, do the research and see the Glassdoor reviews. You'll be able to get a gist of typically recruiters are responsive or not. And again, that can be for a lot of different reasons. And so just leading with that empathy and opening that email to like, I understand you may not have that update, but even if I can get that update and being able to really be at the forefront of that recruiter's mind.
Awesome, thank you. Barbara, there was a question in relation to something you said earlier from Jasmine. She asked, following your advice to get to know the recruiter and do research, would you suggest viewing their profile prior to a phone interview so that the recruiter gets a notification that they are viewing the profile, or does that seem too intrusive? What do you think?
I don't know that it adds any points to show that you've seen their profile, but rather maybe that you've learned about themselves and their experience and maybe finding ways to start that genuine connection that Carolina was talking about, maybe which school they went to or which companies they worked at, and see if there's anything you share in common and use that to benefit the rest of your interviewing process, but not really to show that you've checked their profile. That wouldn't really add any points unless there's something you got out of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's really great feedback. Thank you. Karina, I have a couple questions that I'd love to ask you, two specifically. How critical is the cover letter in the process if the resume is only looked at for 6 seconds? Sometimes in my case, 5 or 4. What do you think about that?
Oh, the cover letter question, this is always a good one. And again, it depends on recruiter. I personally, don't spend too much time on a cover letter. I usually go straight to the resume. What I've seen some candidates do really well, however, is they upload the resume and the cover letter in the same PDF. So if you're a recruiter and you're just scrolling, like you'll scroll the resume and you will automatically kind of hit the cover letter. And sometimes if I do have extra time and I'm intrigued, I'll start reading it. But usually, if I'm kind of moving fast paced, I won't necessarily read the cover letter. I'd say the time that a cover letter is usually important is if you're trying to switch industries and kind of need to add a little bit more detail or kind of explain something within your resume. That's usually when I'm a very big fan of a cover letter.
Thank you. And along those lines, I have a transitionary question. Catalina, I'd love to switch over to you. If somebody is outside of the tech industry, for example, Vicente wrote in the chat section that he's coming from the higher education student affairs background. If someone comes from outside of industry, such as student affairs, higher education, the nonprofit sector, and they want a job in tech, how would you advise somebody to make that transition?
Definitely, and that's a great question. Actually, funny enough, I have similar background. I used to be in higher ed. Like all through college, I did all higher ed things, and I used that to actually get my recruiting, or my recruiting roles. And I've actually changed industries quite a bit. So I went from tech to VC, back to tech, and then entrepreneurship. So I would encourage everybody to actually understand what your experience is and what you can bring to the table. Literally sit down and be like, great, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What do I need to, what do I excel at? What maybe I don't know, right? Then go to the job description that you're trying to get and then match everything and be like, great, do I do this, this, and that? Awesome. If I don't, what can I do in order to show that I would be capable of learning, right? And what other instances in my career have I learned something new? And so basically you're just always like showing the recruiter or whoever you're speaking to that you are able to learn and you have done similar work in the past. No role, and this is non-technical, no non-technical role is that different. So for example, like if you're in technical, right? So I did a lot of technical recruiting. It's a little bit harder, to go from purely technical to like another technical thing because you need a lot of certifications, you need a lot of things that maybe you don't have, right? And so that requires a different level. But if you're going from a non-technical role to a non-technical role, chances are you have a lot more experience that you think you do. And just literally going through the job description and being like, yep, check that box, this box, right? And I don't check this box, that box, but this is what I can do to get there. And also being like, seeing opportunities like Julieta was saying of strategizing of how your specific experience can actually help add value because maybe no one else has higher education experience, right? And you can bring something to the role that no one else can, and not discounting yourself, but really looking at yourself as like a value add to that organization.
Thank you. With that said, we are at time, 3:30. To everybody that joined, thank you so much for the questions. Everybody, if you're on the call, please drop your LinkedIns, connect with each other, connect with us. I don't know, I won't speak for my panelists, but I think that I'm always on LinkedIn. I feel like we maybe all are to some degree. But that said, I'd love to do just one quick thing to wrap up, if that's okay. One word. How is everybody feeling after this panel? Emmanuel, I'd love if we can start with you. What's one word to describe yourself, how you're feeling?
I say in Spanish, emocionado.
I love it. Barbara, would you like to go next?
Fulfilled.
Juliana? Catalina?
Guys.
Yes, 100%. And then Karina? Oh, did we lose? I think we may have lost. Oh, Karina, are you there?
Here now. Overjoyed.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to everybody that joined. We really appreciate it. We're on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with all of us. That said, thank you so much to the panelists, to Julieta, to Barbara, to Manuel, Karina, and Catalina. Thank you so much for coming on and taking time out of your schedules. And to everybody joining, thank you so much. And we hope you have a great rest of the summit. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.